Welcome back to Chamber Talk. I'm Andrew Gregson, and today we're joined by Congressman Derek Tran, who represents the California's 45th Congressional District. Congressman Tran, you might have seen all over the news recently, and if you want to learn more about him, he was actually on episode 35 of Chamber Talk, and of course 50 episodes later he's come back to join us to tell us about how his first year and a bit has been in Congress. So welcome, Congressman. Really appreciate you coming in today.
Hi everyone, thanks so much, Andrew, for having me. I'm looking forward to being on this episode with you, number 85.
So I wanted to start off really because this is something nobody really knows, and you went into this and you were really keen. I loved what you had to say on that episode. So how has your first year been in Congress, like as an individual experiencing it all?
Sure, I think coming from never having been elected before and experiencing elected office, experiencing the long flight every week from LAX to Washington D.C. It's been hard. That's hard. The partisanship that I experience and I see in Washington D.C. has been hard. When I got elected, I was ready to hit the ground running. Mm-hmm. I was ready to start working on the important issues for my constituencies, for my communities, and that's what I really wanted to do. But seeing how much gamemanship, how much division there is in D.C. has been very tough. But I continue to look at this as an experience to rise above and to work with my fellow, not just Democrats, but Republicans, anyone that's willing to just come together and get things done for the American people, for our communities. That's what I look forward to the most.
I think one thing that you mentioned there about that we don't really think of, do we, as the general public watching maybe the news versus or things like that, is, it's not just a case of you making a statement, like you just mentioned. There was so much more that suddenly you walked into, this is going on. But how does that also affect your private life with your family? I mean, you're away from home a lot, you've still got young kids.
Look, the challenge is definitely there. Having 3 young kids, 9, 7, and 3, and being away for most of the week. We're in session 3 weeks out of the month.
Right.
That means I'm doing that flight to D.C. from LAX 3 times a month, back and forth. But I come back for my family. I come back for my community, because I think it's very important to be here on those days that I'm not in Washington, D.C., eating at my local businesses, talking to the constituents on the streets when I see them, chatting with them and seeing what's top of mind at the grocery store. That you cannot replace, and you cannot do that when you're in Washington, D.C. So I have to be there for that. And while I'm doing that here, it's about family time as well.
Mm. No, it makes sense, because you got to fit it all in, especially being a husband and a father, right? It's very important. So when we last spoke, obviously you're a candidate, and now you're governing. What would you say surprised you the most about the job since you took office?
I think it's a tough job, and sometimes folks and the media and TV shows and movies they glorify the position. This is a Congress member or a senator or someone that goes to Washington D.C. and passes laws, and it's this high profile job, and it is.
Yes,
but it's a very hard job. Beyond legislating, you have to listen to your community. And believe me, our communities are very loud and very vocal. So you always have to be there for them, listening to what's important to them. And the hard part is not that. I love that part. I love learning what the issues are for my communities and using my platform, my position to effectuate change for them. I love that part. The hard part is finding folks to work with in order to get bills passed, because when you get to Washington D.C., I am only one of 434 other members out there, And one member cannot do it by themselves in passing a bill. You have to build a coalition. You have to build a team to support something. So it becomes tricky, especially when you're in the minority. But I am absolutely very proud of the work that I've been able to bring back and accomplish for my community in the last year.
That's good to hear. Whilst you're serving, you're also on the House of Armed Services Committee, and also the House of Small Business Committee, which that's very helpful. I appreciate you doing that. What's your strategy in seeking those assignments, and how do you connect the needs, especially with the District 45?
Yeah, look, when I looked at the committees that I petitioned leadership for, because it's not automatic. It's not like
Sure.
you select the committee you want and you get it. You have to give your explanation on why you deserve and should be on that committee. I selected House Armed Services. We have the Los Alamitos Joint Training Base right in my district, right down the street from here. It is a huge, not just an economic driver for our region, but a public safety entity that's very important that we have that base and that it stays active, because during the fires, that base was used for all of the aircraft that were carrying water to Altadena, for example, in the Palisades. So that base is a very strategic base, and I wanted to make sure I represented such an important base. Given my veteran status, and I finished my training at that base too, there's this connection and love for it. So I wanted the Armed Service Committee for that. When it comes to the House Small Business Committee, I'm a small business owner. My wife still is very much. And before coming to Congress, I had my own law practice. So small business is in my blood. 99% of the businesses in Orange County are small businesses. So what better way for me to, advocate and be able to bring back resources than on a committee such as small business?
And you were mentioning then, obviously, it was a big thing for all of us, even if we weren't physically affected by it with the fires. How does an event like that affect your job? Because obviously now it's almost like things. I'm assuming things go on hold because you have to deal with something else because it's more of an emergency. How did that play out for you?
Look, it's tough to see when our communities are ravaged by a natural disaster like fires, like wildfires. I was able to do a tour of the city of Altadena right after the fires with some congressional members, with some high-stake players in the community over there, and saw what happened to that amazing city. It was pretty much burned down, like something out of the movies. You would think a bomb dropped in that area and just completely destroyed it, and that's what it looked like. But to the point of my job and what I can do, or my ability to advocate for more resources, for example, towards any type of natural disaster event, we continue to petition the president for federal aid. I mean, the Republican Party, unfortunately, has made federal aid for natural disaster a political game. And these residents in the Palisades and Altadena has not received any of the federal money. It's very unfair. It's very un-American, actually.
Moving on from that, I suppose the next follow-up question before we lead on is, what can you and your colleagues do to help, make that go forward?
Yeah, I think it's a continuation of making sure we highlight the 1-year anniversary of the fires. We did a press conference at the Capitol, and I was there in support, even though none of my communities were directly impacted by the fires. But it was important to show up for my fellow congressional members who had communities destroyed by the fire. Continue to lend support to our governor when he asked for aid from the president, because all of this is administered by FEMA, and President Trump needs to tell his Republican House members to release those funds. One of the most frustrating part of all the job that I see is that when it comes to natural disaster, we always look at, hey, how can we help that community or that impacted person, whether they're in Louisiana, a red state, or they're in California, a blue state.
Sure.
We shouldn't look at party affiliation when it comes to that. No. So it's a constant reminder for me, telling my colleagues, natural disaster does not see party lines. We have to help all Americans when they're impacted. And I continue to voice that when I'm in Washington, D.C.
I think when you said it's un-American, I suppose really answers that question, really, because that's not what you think of as folks in America. Moving back into, obviously, the subcommittee on the small business arena there, for local businesses watching, excuse me, for local businesses watching, what does that role actually allow you to influence?
Yeah, I think a lot, right? This is a committee that oversees the SBA and conducts oversight on all the small business administration. So when you're talking about loans to startups, entrepreneurs seeking funding for expansion of their business, they go through likely the Small Business Administration. So being part of a committee that's as important as making sure there's adequate funding for all the startups and expansions out there, making sure that there's less red tape, making sure that even when you're dealing with contracts, that plain language is being used. I recently put together a bill raising the cap on the startup deduction, from $5,000 to $50,000. I mean, $5,000.
It's not much.
It's not much.
Really.
It's not much.
It's nothing for a business to start.
Be able to pay the permits and stuff like that to get started, and it's gone. Yeah. You're right. Yeah. So even $50,000, I don't think it's enough, but it is 10x what it is currently at right now. Right. So I'm very proud of that type of work. Like, I can bring my perspective to the Small Business Committee and share my experiences in having a small pharmacy with my wife, and how hard it was for us to get an SBA loan, because we got an SBA loan.
Right.
So those are some of the highlights that I can bring back and share that I've done in the Small Business Committee.
Didn't you do something about a baby food tax relief act?
That is a bill that I put together as well when I saw these egregious tariffs, the policies that the president was putting out there on tariffs. It just was something that, one, impacted so many families out in my community. I heard from them right away that baby bottles, baby formula, other products like high chairs was just, the prices were just skyrocketing. Right. I mean, if you look just at the tag of where these products come from, unfortunately, it's all overseas, right? 90-something% of our baby products come from overseas. Sure. And these tariffs, the impacts of these tariffs, whether it's 25% or 40% increases, it flows down to the consumer, and they're responsible for that. So immediately I took action with my team, and we put together a bill to exempt, at the very least, baby products, high chairs, formula, bottles, because we want to take care of these working families. They are spending way too much money every single year. They can't afford an extra few hundred or even thousands of dollars on cost to these products just because of an erratic tariff policy.
Now, talking about tariffs, and I don't want to get deep into it because I don't wish to put you on a spot or anything here, but overall, has there been movement where other countries are maybe not charging as much as they did, which was originally part of the problem, let's say, and then it's leveling out? Or are we still in this we don't know what's going on stage?
I think we're very much in a confused, erratic nature of the whims of this president. One day he announces 40%, 70% tariffs, and then the next day, it goes down to 20%. The hard part is for these businesses, whether they're large businesses or small businesses, who have to buy products and resell here in our country. Right? They're paying these high costs, and they can't plan out their budget, for the next 6 months even, because of these tariff policies that are so erratic. So it causes them not just stress, but financial strain. And ultimately, if they can afford to pay those extra tariffs, they pass that on to the consumers.
Now it sounds like you, because even watching online, you're very aware of cost of living and things like that, and I know you've spoke on it quite a few times. You want to share a little bit about what you've been working on for that and how it'll filter down to us, hopefully eventually.
Look, I mean that's always been one of my top priorities in Congress. It's my top priority in Congress because that's my community's top priority. When I go back, I constantly hear, it's not complaints, it's the reality of what they're facing.
100%.
High groceries, high child care, gas prices going up, although it's been pretty stable on that end, but nothing else has been, they share, when we go to eat as a family, our bill has shot up 40%.
Yes.
And 50% in some cases. And that's not fair for them. So they want you to focus as they're elected on making sure costs are low. So small things like the baby food tax relief act that I put together, that's going to help young families who are just getting started. The continuation of making sure we hold corporations accountable for greedflation, like overcharging consumers. That's something that I'm always actively looking at, making sure that I protect my constituents. But beyond that, there are just so many other issues that my community care about. But that is at top of mind when it comes to what they want me to focus on.
Now, I don't wish you to have to go into it chapter and verse, but let's just mention for folks like the Baby Food Tax Relief Act. In reality, because obviously, like you mentioned earlier, it's not just one person. You've got to go find other people to help, rally around and do this too. In reality, when do you think things like those types of reliefs will hit the street where we as the consumer will start seeing that?
Yeah, look, I don't have a crystal ball.
Sure.
All I can commit to is that I continue to work very hard trying to get bipartisan support for my bills. This specific bill, along with so many others, I'm having and struggling to find bipartisan support. But there are bills where there are support for, like the small business, 5,000, 50,000, increasing those caps for business deduction, a startup. That is bipartisan. So you got to take the wins where they're at, where you can get them. But at the same time, I'm still very much focused on making sure I win on the baby food, making sure that we continue to lower costs and healthcare costs, prescription costs for our everyday constituents.
And when you were mentioning there, obviously you're trying to get people to rally round. Are there a lot? Do you find, regardless of what party, do you find that it can be a challenge to work with, because like you said, there's 430 odd people, 430 other mindsets. Like, is it a really hard challenge, or do people find a level playing field?
Look, I think it is a challenge, but it's like everything that you do in life. You have to win people over, right? You gotta bring them onto your cause or find a common cause. But a lot of this has to do with also compromise and finding common ground. So you can't have it your way, 100% of the time. You gotta work with each other to find that common ground, and that's something that I've been very much focused on and dedicated to. That's why I've been able to get bipartisan support on something as simple as plain language in contracting. That's a bipartisan bill between Democrats and Republicans pushing it forward. We find common ground on those type of issues.
And do you see, how we have with North, we live in Orange County, right? So we've got a slight divide between North and South. There's different mindsets, right? Do you see that in Congress, where you're from California and people going, well, you're from California, and then other states? Does that sort of play into the role too a little bit? Or?
I think a little bit, but mainly when we go to Congress, when we go to Washington, D.C., our ultimate priority is how are we best serving our communities, right? Cost of living is something that's a problem across all 50 states.
Right.
Doesn't matter if you're a red state or blue state, it impacts you. Healthcare, wanting healthcare, making sure that it's affordable. That, again, crosses all 50 states. It's not just a California thing or a Texas thing.
Where you're sat, do you feel that there's still sometimes too much government interference, or that we need to move back a bit, or is it just you're trying to make a level playing field? How do you see that?
Look, I think it's a little bit of both. I think when you look at permitting reform and bills that we're trying to make sure that there's less red tape, less bureaucracy out there, I'm for it. If you look at my voting record, I've been voting with a bipartisan with my Republican colleagues where we can reduce bureaucracy and red tape. I think that's very important. But there is, as you mentioned, level playing field. That is something that's always going to be very important, right? We always want that underdog to be able to have the same opportunities that anyone else would have. And if we can help just a little bit, maybe we should. And I keep an eye out for that. But at the same time, over-regulation, bad.
Yeah. And how do you mentioned earlier that you're pushing quite a few different bits and pieces through. What seems to be your most proud, I suppose, is a right word, but what are you most happy or pleased about what you've been pushing forward? It seems to be working in the right direction for you right now.
I think when it comes to using my platform and my soapbox to make sure my community is heard in Washington, D.C., I was very proud of the Baby Food Tax Relief Act. 100%, because that's something that so many struggling new families are having issues with, and that they've been sharing with me. And just to be that small voice for them, and to bring forward a bill like that for that community, those starting families, is a big deal. It's important to me. Another big win I had, though there was no bipartisan support, so it's still very much kind of stuck in Congress right now, is the Protect Veterans Jobs Act, one of my first bills that I brought to the floor. When I saw the mass firing from DOJ, and that firing was impacting our veterans. These are people who risked their lives to protect this country, donned the uniform to make sure that you and I have the same freedoms and that we were guaranteed by our Constitution. When I saw that those folks were being indiscriminately let go, I had to do something. So I stepped up right away and put together a bill, and I highlighted a gentleman that was fired from CISA, a cybersecurity government job that he had. And he just recently told me about 2-3 weeks ago that he got his job back. And after being unemployed for a year. So it's good to hear that when we push our legislation, when we push issues, and we can help our constituents, and we can help those that served our country, our veterans, it is a win. So I'm proud of those type of small wins that I've been able to get.
Now I do know, because we see you around. You are very active when you're not in Washington and you come back home, and welcome back home. But obviously, so are also your staff. Have you personally been able to see a few things that have changed within your district since you've actually been in office that you could share with us?
Yeah, I think so. I think we've been able to secure some significant wins. I was able to get 15 projects approved by appropriations. Now, that's the very first step in getting funding for these projects, and these are community projects that are submitted to us by either nonprofits or government entities, and they range from public safety, to a storm pump. I got speaking of storm pump, the city of Cypress submitted a storm pump that was dilapidated, and it needed a new one. A little bit over $1 million for that project. Got that project through the House. Wow. So now just waiting for the Senate and then the President to sign, and they're going to have their money. So nice. It looks like it's headed in the right direction. We'll get them that funding within the next month or so. Small wins like that, where that pump affects almost 400 homes from flooding and 4 schools from flooding. That's a win for my community. That's a win for the city of Cypress. I also got $1 million for our Hope Center. That's freeing up these resources, hiring more social service personnel to free up our law enforcement resources so they can respond to homelessness, mental illness crises. That will free up the law enforcement from doing that, allows them to actually do their job.
Right.
So very proud to secure $1 million for them and got that past the House as well. So there are 13 other projects just like those, that I continue to work on and continue to make sure that my community gets those priorities that they so deserve.
Now, to me, it seems like it's a very selfless job when somebody goes into office like you did, because as we all know, the local elections are coming back up, and now you've got to also campaign a little bit too. Yet you've got so much you want to push forward and all the rest of the stuff. So how much does that take a little bit of an additional toll or challenge on you whilst you're still trying to do your best in office, but at the same time now you're going to run out and try and push up the votes again?
Look, serving my community is my first priority. The campaigning, all that other stuff is secondary, right? I'm focused on making sure that I go and vote in DC when I'm needed there. And that's my job for my community. All that campaigning stuff happens when I have some free time. And it's very much part of our democracy. That's how it works. Unfortunately, the House congressional members are up for election every 2 years. Pretty short. Some people think it's pretty long, but it's not that long. The minute you get in, you work on some legislation, and then campaign season comes right back up, and you got to start up on that again. But my commitment to my community is always serving them as their Congress member first. Campaigning is second for me. Definitely does take extra time, extra toll, but it's part of the job. And that's why I see it.
Now, after hearing that, obviously that's going to be pretty difficult to plan, isn't it? Because you're trying to plan things in a very short period. But you are a planner, So what is next? Like, where do you see what's going on into, let's say, your next term? What do you see you want to try and achieve or push forward? Yeah,
same things that I've been doing today, but on a more expanded role, given that I do predict that, in this year's election cycle in November, will likely win back the House. So being in the majority means I can bring back even more resources for my community. Continuing to focus on cost of living issues, continuing focusing on crime and immigration enforcement. What we didn't talk about at all is I've been hearing from our small businesses as well that they're not supporting the ICE enforcement that's happening right now. Their workers are scared to come to work because of what's happening. Their workers are scared to send their kids to school, so they're staying home with their kids instead of going to work. That doesn't help our small businesses. It doesn't help our economy. These are the things that I can want to continue to focus on. And we're going to get more of a chance to focus on that once the majority is with my party.
Talking about that, I know there's no specific data yet because it's still new, but personal experience is, yes, it has taken a toll on local businesses, right or wrong. I'm just saying it really has. Folks haven't been turning up for work, which is hard for the business owner then to continue. There's a lot of construction businesses, especially the small ones, because we're dealing more with the small businesses that they're finding it difficult to even remain open because now they don't have any workforce. And then the other one is, we noticed it when we came up to the last holidays, is that parents weren't even taking the kids to school because they were scared.
That's right.
And we're not choosing that somebody's right or wrong here. It's just we have to try and fix that. So I suppose on that point, what are you looking at doing, and what are your colleagues at Congress trying to do to help this out?
Look, I think there's a recognition that we're in the minority, meaning that we don't have the gavels. We cannot exercise the oversight and due diligence that we need to exercise over these agencies, DHS, ICE, Border Patrol, whichever, you name it. Once that changes and we have the gavels back, then we can call them in and conduct oversight and manage this process a little bit better. I don't think it's healthy for any community to have this type of fear where, you've been in this country for 20, 30 years paying your taxes, maybe going to your green card check-in and then now getting detained, or a family member that gets detained. All of that type of fear, that impacts our community. It impacts our small businesses, it impacts our schools, the students, the administrators, it impacts me and you. So, the focus has to remain on the fact that what's happening today is not right. It's un-American. It's not the focus that the American people want or need right now. It's cost of living, it's inflation. That's what they're concerned with. Let's have this administration focus on that. There's so much he can do, this administration, to lessen the impacts of costs for everyday Americans. We need more of that and less of this fear-mongering and these reckless enforcement that's happening today.
Now, you mentioned there about, obviously, you're looking forward to the new year and the new election year, and hopefully, obviously, be able to take back the House. For those who not quite sure what that really means, do you mind sharing a little bit about what that means in the sight of your eyes, so to speak?
Yeah, right now the Republicans has the majority in the House of Representatives. They have the majority in the Senate. They have the presidency. Some would even argue that they have the Supreme Court, right, with the number of appointments from a Republican president. Having the ability to win back the House for the Democrats means we get to set our platform and agenda moving forward. That means really, truly conducting oversight, holding an administration that might be out of bounds accountable, right? And I say might be because until we have those hearings, we don't know.
Right.
But what we're seeing today is what I'm hearing today, and what I'm seeing is that this is not what the community wants at all from our executive branch. And they need Congress to step up to do their job. It's a checks and balance that we have with Congress over the executive branch. So if the executive branch is overstepping, then it's Congress's job to come in and rein them in. We're not seeing that, unfortunately, because the House of Representatives is controlled by the Republicans. They're letting this president do whatever he wants. When we see troops and a federalization of all these ICE agents on American cities, Congress can do something about that. But under this Republican-controlled Congress, we're not. And that needs to change.
Now, I appreciate your time today, and I know you're a busy guy, and you're on your time right now, and we want to get you going. So I want to going to cut it short a little bit because, unless there's something else to share, but I want to give you the opportunity that, as we do all the time, is there something we've missed and you want to share that with us today, or maybe talk about it? I'd like to give you that opportunity.
Thanks, Andrew. A few things. I want to first mention how deeply honored I've been to be able to serve in this capacity for my community. I think with the right voice and with the right person representing the cities and the communities, it makes a difference. And I hope it's not just what I say, but measure me by my actions that I've taken, which includes the resources that I've been able to bring back for our cities that I serve. Second thing is, I need to hear from my community more. It's not enough that I see people at the grocery store and I'm talking to them, or talking to them at the gas pump. I need them to reach out to my office.
Okay.
And we have an open door policy. Come bring us your issues, whether you have an IRS, Social Security, Veteran Affairs issue, bring it to us. If you have a small business and you see something that you don't like, or too much red tape, too much bureaucracy, come to us, let us know. I can't be everywhere. I depend and rely on those that can be vocal to call in and let us know. And we're all ears. So I ask for that help for my community.
Okay, and so just so everybody knows, what's the best way of reaching out to your office?
Yeah, so best way, we're all over the internet. So Google us, follow us on Instagram, Facebook. Sign up for my official newsletter. I put one out pretty much every month, detailing what I've been doing for my community and the resources and the money that we have been able to bring back to CA 45.
Well, Congressman Tran, thank you so very much for spending the time with us today. I'm so glad to see you're doing well in your first term, and wish you all the very best for this upcoming year.
Thanks so much, Andrew.
Thank you, listeners, for tuning in to Chamber Talk. Until next time, stay inspired and connected by visiting nocchamber.com and selecting sign up for news at the homepage. For more interviews, visit chambertalk.podbean.com.